Welcome
to the joy of coding.
Hello, and welcome to episode 124 of The Joy of Coding. My name is Mike Conley. This is the last episode of The Joy of Coding for the year 2017. Woo! Do I have a woo sound? I need like a crowd sound. I don't know. Here, this is how we're going to play, where this is the sound I'm going to play for clearing out the air. I'll see if I can get more sounds for next year. But anyways, yeah, that's it. That's going to be, this is the last episode for 2017. I hope you've had a good year. I hope if you're on holidays or about to enter holidays, I hope it's a good one. But before we start celebrating the holidays, let's do some work. So what's going on here? Well, let me first pump up the font so you can see it. Just so you know, this is the last episode of the year. I'm going to be taking a little bit of a break, and then I'm back on January 10th, the Wednesday. That will be the episode 125, and it's going to be continuing as per usual. Who knows, maybe I'll have some new sounds, maybe I'll have some new equipment, new ideas for ways we can improve things. Who knows, but that's when we're starting up again, is January 10th. This agenda that we're looking at, you might actually find it useful if you want to click on things, follow links around, maybe follow along with what I'm doing. So just for the folks who don't know, if you're interested in getting a copy of this agenda and clicking around, it's available to you. And it's synchronized every time I write something and hit save, and this little like spinny dude, this little spinny guy goes, then it gets updated to all of the places where you're reading it. It's basically like a one-way Google Doc. And so brain is slow today. Depending on where you're watching this video, there are a couple of different places where you can get a copy of this agenda. So if you're on Mozilla, scroll down to the additional link section, because the link is in there. And if you're on YouTube, it's in the video description down there. And if you're on Twitch, then, well, I'm about to drop it in the Twitch chat actually, because you don't have like a place for me. Twitch doesn't have a place for me to put links. So here, I just dropped it in the Twitch chat. And if you're watching this on Facebook Live, it's in a pinned comment down below. Go down there and find the pinned comment. And there's also a link to a form that lets you rate this episode and let me know what you thought of it. So I'm going to put a link to that as well in Twitch chat. And in all the other places, it's in the same place as the agenda. And there's also a link in the agenda to it, because I really want you to let me know what you think, because I read all the comments that come in. So what are we doing today? Actually, before I get into today, I do want to highlight the episode guide again. If you're not familiar, the episode guide is a completely viewer-run resource for people who are interested in reading notes about these episodes and maybe even contributing notes. We've got up to episode 120, it looks like. And, you know, whenever you read these, sometimes you'll get like little topics, things that I've been doing in the video, ideas of things I might work on, or techniques I used. Other times you just get maybe just the link to the episode in the agenda, but sometimes that's useful too. And you can actually update these episode guides if you have your own notes. I invite you to send a pull request to the repository, and if you're not sure how to do that, there's a guide for doing that here. And like, I'm pretty liberal about what I'll accept, even if it's just, you know, your own explorations along similar things. You know, add your own notes, and we'll link to them, or we'll add them to the document itself, and I'll merge them. So send me your episode guide pull requests, and I'll probably merge them. So finally, what are we doing today? First of all, I should probably have done this at the very beginning. Is everything working? Yes, I'm not dropping frames. Yes, I'm live. Yes, I'm recording. And yes, you can hear me, and the sounds are working, I'm pretty sure. Yes, okay, good. This is an out-of-date bullet. I'm not traveling anymore. I was traveling last week. This is what I want to work on today. So a couple of things. This first thing is actually a bug I'm not assigned to, but I'm mentoring. So I don't know if you know this, but if you ever want to work on a Firefox bug, we have this selection of good first bugs. If you go to this tool that we have called Bugs Ahoy, which I'll drop a link to in the agenda. Let me put a link to it here. Bugs Ahoy. Bugs Ahoy allows you to find mentored bugs for Firefox. So for example, let's say I want to work on the user interface and maybe web extensions. Then it will find you a list of bugs and tell you like when it was last updated and if anyone's assigned to it. And all of these bugs have mentors assigned to them. So I'm just going to pick one at random. Let's do this one, this top one. And it's assigned to Alejandro Rodriguez Salamanca. I hope I pronounced that name correctly. And the mentor here is Chutton, Chris HC, aka Chutton. And so, you know, as Alejandro is working on this, Chutton is guiding Alejandro through it, giving him tips, etc., etc. And so that's what we're dealing with here, is a bug where I'm mentoring it. This is a contributor named Arjun, who is working on a patch to make it, I guess, lighter weight to deal with background crash tabs. So here's the situation. Here's what Arjun's trying to fix. Whenever you have a whole strip of tabs, when you have a bunch of tabs open, they're in these days a bunch of them will be in different content processes. They'll be running in different processes. And some of those processes can crash even when you're not viewing the tab. Like if you could be viewing a tab in one process and you have another tab in a different process that you're not looking at, and then that tab that you're not looking at can crash. And what we currently do in that scenario is we do what's called a remoteness flip, and then send that background tab to a special page called About Blank, which, as it probably sounds, is this, a blank page. And so what I'm like, that's kind of expensive. The remoteness flip means run the background tab now in the parent process and load About Blank in it. And the reason we do that is because we don't want to accidentally get into a crash loop where we try and create another content process for that background tab and it crashes and we keep looping and looping and looping. So what we're doing instead is, we do this remoteness flip to run that background tab in the parent process, load About Blank, and then when you select it, then we transition you back into a content process, and you know, if it crashes, then it'll crash again, but it will restore on demand, so it's less likely that it will crash until you actually click on it. And this whole remoteness flipping and loading About Blank is not cheap. It's not the worst, but especially if you have a bunch of background tabs and they all crash at the same time, then that gets actually pretty expensive. It's the equivalent of closing a bunch of tabs and then opening a bunch of new tabs in the background and sending them all to About Blank, which gets progressively more and more expensive the more tabs there are. So if you only have one background tab that crashes, it's not so bad. If you have 1,000 tabs crashing in the background, that's more expensive. The good news is that we actually these days have a really cheap mechanism that we can use instead of remoteness flipping and About Blank, unloading About Blank, and that's called the tab discarding. This is an innovation brought to us by Kevin Jones, a Firefox contributor who made it way faster to restore Firefox whenever you have a bunch of tabs in your session. What we have is these tabs that when you click them, let's say I restore my session. I'm going to shut this browser down. I'm going to show you an example. I'm going to shut my browser down, and let's see if I can do that. I need the toolbar. Where's the toolbar? I'm trying to turn on the toolbar. I think the toolbar thinks it's open, but it's not. That's called working on the edge. I'm just going to shut down the browser. I'm just going to quit it. And now I'm going to restart the browser. And so I've got my Mozilla.org page here is open by default. And because that was the selected tab. These two tabs in the background haven't actually loaded yet. They show their titles because the session state remembers those titles, but they'll only load whenever I click on them. And I'm not going to provide my master password just now. They're loaded lazily on demand. And what we used to do is kind of like what we're doing in the crash case, where we'd have all of these about blank tabs sitting in the background until you selected them, and then we'd load them. But Kevin Jones made it so that we don't even have these about blank browsers sitting in the background. We just have these tabs up here, and then when you select them, we create the browser on demand, and then we send you someplace. So we never have that wasteful creation of about blank. And that actually made tab restoration a lot faster. So that was it in action right there, where we create the browser and then we load the content in it. So that's great. So what I wanted to do, what this bug is all about, is using that same discarding mechanism whenever we crash in the background instead of just on restoration. And that's what Arjun's been working on. And Arjun has a patch that seems to work. I'm actually going to pull down this patch and show it to you right now. So let's go to... So essentially, let me pump up the font a little. I think I have some other patches on here, but I'm not going to worry about it just now. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to pull down Arjun's patch and apply it on top. Mercurial does its thing, and then that should be the patch that I have checked out. It should be on top now, yeah. And now I'm going to build faster, because the only stuff he touched was, I believe, in JavaScript and some XML, some of our XBL bindings, so I can use mock build faster. And now I'm going to run. So here's what's going to happen now. Here's one of my testing images, and I'm at about home. Ignore the logging in the background. I'm dealing with tab switching stuff again. We might get there later. But suppose now that this background tab, which is running in process, you can't really see that, is 20781. Let's make that crash. So I'm going to open up, I guess I'll use terminal. 28, what was it? 20781. Kill, sig kill, 28, oh, I forgot again, 20781. That's 20781. So that background tab crashes. And so now it's hard for me to, like, if I click on that browser, it'll load, but I want to see what it's like right now without loading in the background, without clicking on it. So I'm going to get the tabs. There are two tabs. I choose the second one, and that's pointed at that image. And I'm going to see if there's a linked panel. And there isn't. It's an empty string, and that means that the browser doesn't exist. If I attempt to access the browser, it'll be created lazily, like it's created lazily. So I don't want to try and access the browser, but I can tell because the linked panel is empty that a browser doesn't exist. So if I looked at the linked panel on the first tab, then I get an ID. But because the linked panel is empty for the second tab, that's why I know it's missing, or it's empty. Now, the one thing is I'll notice that there is a tabbed linked browser frame loader is null error on 5286. That's something worth addressing. I'm actually going to start taking some notes here. Oh, hold on. But before we continue, I should point out that I'm reviewing this patch, and I'm also trying to help Arjun with a series of test failures that he's got. And I haven't even read the comment here, but he came back saying he needs help, and so that's what I'm hoping to read and interpret and do live during this live coding exercise, is read this comment, figure out what's going on, and help Arjun out. That's my plan. So, but before I do that, I'm going to create a new note. I'm going to call this, this is under active code reviews, and I'm going to make it bug, this bug. And put the URL in there. And so if you want a link to this note, I'm going to put a link to that here. Code review notes. And it's not really a code review, but it's also not me actively working on the bugs. That's why I've put it there. A bunch of these aren't actually active, as you can tell from the time they've been last updated. 2015. So I should probably clear these out. But for now, this is where I'll put my note. Okay, so let's read what what I wrote earlier so you can get some context. So the context is that we currently have some test failures with the patch. We have these two tests failing, and let's see if I can reproduce that locally. So I'm going to shut down the browser instance I've got here, and I'm going to clear, and I'm going to say moki test, and we're going to run browser background tab crash. We'll see if that fails. It looks like it's failing, because otherwise something would have happened by now. Oh, and that's why 5286 is failing, is because there's like some logging stuff inside log state, and we don't have to worry about that. It's from my tab switching code that hasn't actually landed, so don't worry about it. But there's a test unexpected fail there because of it, but it's also this timeout. This timeout is the big problem. So that's one thing, and this is the other test. Let's see if that one fails as well. And it appears to. It's like we're just sitting here. We're just sitting here not doing anything. So we have to figure out why. And hopefully it has nothing to do with the this stuff. In fact, let me eliminate that as a possibility. I'm going to actually rebase Arjun's patch on top of an earlier. So this logging stuff I've added for an unrelated bug is, I think, what's causing the issue with the frame loader bug, the frame loader error. So I'm actually going to rebase this on top of this, which doesn't have the logging, and then we'll base it off that. And then while we wait for this to build, let's see where we are. We should have Arjun's patch. Yeah, okay. So while we wait for this to build, let's now read Arjun's comment. So Arjun says, I'm kind of stuck. In browser background tab crash, line 99 is probably incorrect under the new circumstances because we stopped explicitly setting the remoteness of the browser to false, didn't we? Yeah, we should probably... we should definitely get rid of that assertion. Arjun is right. However, line 99 is probably not the only thing that makes this test fail. In fact, it doesn't make the test fail anyway. Apparently the failures are caused by some sort of timeout, which in turn seems to be caused by the await operators. There are 3 of them right before line 99. So one of these awaits. The remoteness change promise. That's what's probably hurting us right there. The remoteness change promise. So I'll bet if we remove that, crash background tabs, I'll bet if we remove that, that's going to fix some of this. Let's wait for this to finish building. But in the meantime, we can open this up. Browser background tab crash. All right, it's done building. Browser background tab crash. So we don't do the remoteness change anymore, so we can get rid of that. And then we get rid of this await. And then get rid of that check. Tab is still remote. Oh, we don't want to access the browser. Well, we could access the browser. That's okay. Promise all. Whoops, why'd that light turn out? Hey, I'm still in here. Night mode. Hold on a sec. Thank you. I think, so there's a box in the way, the light sensor, and it totally didn't detect that I was still in this room. So it was trying to save power. So here's what I'm thinking. I think a lot of this is still useful, but before we do any of this stuff, I'm gonna say maybe we should assert that okay, tab.linked panel. Tab should be discarded. Okay. So let's see if that is enough to get this thing going. Background tab crash? Yeah, that was the one. Still waiting for something. Pass, tab is remote, true. All that passed and then we're just waiting for something still. What are we waiting for? Well, maybe we could simplify this a little bit by by only running one of these tests. Let's run just this last one, for example. So that has the dot only. Oh, there is a setup in here, so we have to use skip. We can't use only. We're gonna skip the last one and skip the second last one. And we'll only run the first one. So we're skipping, and let's run it and see what happens. Okay, that's good. So that means that this one is also failing, or it's waiting forever. So let's find out where. Hey, waiting to crash background tabs. Dump, done waiting to crash background tabs. In fact, here's another way I could do that. Instead of logging, is I'll put a debugger in there, and then I'll run with JS debugger. Let me pump up the font a little bit more here. Bring this up. Actually, get the size right. All right, so run the test. I'm in debugger here. I'm gonna set a breakpoint here and hit play. And yeah, I never get through crash background tabs. So I'm gonna stop again. And instead, I'm gonna set a breakpoint inside crash background tabs right here. Oh, there's some chat going on inside Twitch. Sorry, and thank you for Evil Pie who dove in there. Sika07 wanted to know if I'm a Mozilla contributor. Yes, and I'm paid to work on this. I'm a Mozilla employee, so I'm paid staff. And so, yeah, thank you, Evil Pie 93 for dumping in. Whew, thanks for jumping in. My brain is a mess today. Let's run this test. Okay. What's interesting is that, setup background tabs already began. Okay, that's what happened there. So we already ran setup background tabs. We're gonna step forward. I guess I didn't need to set that breakpoint. Don't worry about that. So we're gonna go and make sure that the tabs are properly remote. So far, so good. Then we await crashing the browser. Then we await for the tabs to all be revived, and this is probably the part where we're waiting for, and we never come back from. Yeah, tabs revived is not happening. Okay, so now we have to find out why. So tabs revived, I need to get rid of this now. Tabs revived isn't happening, and what that is it's for every tab we're returning a promise that the tab will restore the background tabs, that it will be restored. And promise tab restoring, let's see the code for that. I'm pretty sure it's just waiting on an event SS tab restoring. And SS tab restoring is fired whenever we restore history to the tab. And that should occur whenever we revive that background tab. Trying to remember here how this works. When we crash, browser crashed. We remove the preloaded browser if it's the preloaded browser. Otherwise, we say we revive the back. Okay, so this is the part that we're expecting to run. To revive the background crash tab. And what's Arjun's patch doing? Oh, thank you, Sika07. Sika07 says, it's okay, keep working there because you're, plural, doing a great job there with Firefox and Co. Hey, thank you very much, Sika07. Great to hear from you. Really appreciate the kind words. So my question, I guess the question is, how come this revive crash tab business isn't causing a restoration to occur? Because I thought that's what it was supposed to do. I think this function is revive crash tab. So we should be restoring the tab right here. But somehow we're not. So maybe that's where we should go next, is we should look at setting a breakpoint inside revive crash tab. So we'll do that next. So session store revive crash tab. I'll put a breakpoint there. Zoom that in a bit, and then we're gonna select the kick off the thing. Okay, so we have entered revive crash tab. Our stack is yes, we've crashed, and we're reviving, and so we're gonna step through this whole revival process. We're gonna see if there's so we bail out here. We bail out here because there's no permanent key. Okay, that's why. So we don't restore the tab. Okay, that's one thing. So two things here. Two pieces of advice for Arjun to proceed. The first thing is, we're going to go back to what we were looking at before. Browser background crash, tab crash, .js has a function called crash background tabs that is waiting on tab remoteness change and is checking remoteness. Should remove that check and should instead check after the crash that linked panel is falsy. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is, why is ESLint complaining about this? Tab is not defined. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. That's better, probably. But we hadn't even gotten there yet. The second thing is that in Session Store, we have this like notion of crashed browsers, where if it's stored in here, we will ignore messages from crashed browsers until they get restored. Use the browser permanent key. So when we discard a browser, what happens? We discard browser. We reset the browser to the lazy state. we create a lazy browser instead. We destroy the browser here. Is there anything about the permanent key? Not really. All right. I wonder if we discard a browser, whether or not we should persist the permanent key. Oh. It looks like we set the permanent key on the tab as well whenever we add a tab. T.permanent key equals B.permanent key. Permanent key. So I wonder if we could, instead of revive crashed tab, if this has a tab dot permanent key, I wonder if we could do this instead. And instead of trying to access the browser, and then you shouldn't be looking at browser linked panel, we should be looking at a tab dot linked panel. That's what we should do. Let's see if this works. If so, more advice for Arjun. So let's, just in case, I'm going to mock build faster. You're going to run the test. Still nothing. All right, let's add our debugger again. I'm gonna add a debugger statement here, and we're gonna walk through, see what's going on. Hopefully, do I need to mock build faster there? I never know. I never know. All right, guess I didn't. So what happens here? Now, first of all, does the tab have a permanent key? Yes, it does. And now we're going to step. Oh, crashed browsers doesn't have it. Why not? This dot crashed browsers. Oh, probably because the browser got discarded? Wait a second. Crashed browsers. Crashed browsers has tab. Delete. It's a weak set. When do we add it to the, when we enter the crashed state? And on browser crashed. Let's see if that happens first or second. Debugger. And then debugger here. So first of all, we enter the browser crash state. So we have this browser, and then we're gonna add its permanent key. And you know what? I think what happens next is eventually we will discard that browser. And that's why. So it gets garbage collected. Browser.xml discard. I'll bet you that's what happens. Come on. Apparently searching doesn't work for XML right now. But I'll bet you that's what's happening. So this like reviving of crashed tabs I think we can probably get rid of that. Because we're destroying the browser instead of taking it out of the DOM and putting it back in again. So it's getting garbage collected instead. But still nothing. Let's see what's happening now. Right, do that crash thing, and then reviving. There is a tab. We remove that, and then we collect the data, and then we're going to choose to restore the tab. Force on demand. We create the browser. I think that's not what we want to do. We're creating the browser. We don't really want to restore the tab. We want to like discard browser. That's why I couldn't find it before. Session start reset browser to lazy state. What is that? Reset browser to lazy state. I wonder if that's already kind of doing what we want. I think it might be. So like revive crashed tab, what's it doing? I think we can probably just not do that and just, so instead of calling revive crash tab, we could have that happen. But then hang on, revive reset browser to lazy state. Is there something that we should wait for? This attribute pending. We set the lazy data. Removes listeners that were added when browsers started and reset restoring state. Also reinstate lazy data and basically revert tab to its lazy browser state. Lazy data. Lazy tab value. Tab browser inserted. That's when we restore it, is whenever it's inserted. And that only occurs when we select it. Okay. So there is no restoring going on here. Until we attempt to access them. Crashes them. Tab should be discarded. Tab is still remote. Tab is not crashed. Tab is pending. So like as soon as we attempt to access the linked browser, we should attempt to restore. That's when we should revive. Like, let restored equal promise tab restoring tab await restored. Probably. Is that true? Or maybe tab.linked browser. Let's just do that to force it. And then we can get rid of this. Just to satisfy my own curiosity, but chances are we don't need any of that anyways. Like, let me just get rid of that. Heading true. Now where are we? Oh, we may have broken something here. Aha. We may have broken a mechanism. That's why the test isn't failing. Hey, we our regression tests are working properly. So here's the thing. Whenever we have a series of tabs and background tabs only crash, the first one you select should show you about tab crashed. But the rest of them should just restore whenever you select them. That's the story there. Okay. So we are getting through here, but whenever we selected the tab, there's this thing where we do like should show, or like tab crash. Will show crash tab. On tab select. Here, when we check will show crash tab, that is, I think, what we want to set a breakpoint on next. Content crash handlers will show crash tab. Okay. Okay, so browser, we don't need that breakpoint anymore. So it's interesting, we don't even enter the will show tab crash state. Or we don't enter that block of code at all, so we have to find out why. Oh boy. Oh boy. So on tab select is where it normally happens. Just continue a lot. Continue. What's happening here? Continue. Did I already like Somehow enter the condition. I thought there were 3 tabs before. Maybe I was wrong. Man, okay, so here's what I'm gonna do instead. I'll set the debugger there once we're set up. And I'll set my breakpoint after that. Good. So now we're in the crash state. I have a debugger set up with my breakpoint. And now I'm going to say session store on tab select. And it's not sending me, that's a pain. Come on. What line is it? On tab select. To 105. Right here. What? To 105. What is happening? Why does it keep jumping me around? Grr. Okay, okay. There we go. On tab select. So we selected it and stuff's already loaded. That's too bad. And I think that's the kind of the problem, because the tab doesn't need restoration. So we skip all this stuff. So I think I have to better understand how this laziness stuff that Kevin Jones put in works. Lazy. Whenever we restore the tab, set browser to lazy state, browser, lazy browser. Set all this stuff up, clean up the remote, delete crash browsers, delete last known frame loader. And then we remove the crashed attribute. Good. Then what? When do we restore a lazy browser? Here, I guess. Somehow in restore tab. If the browser's inserted, we do all this stuff. Otherwise, we do this stuff. Present. So Kevin's made it very, very lazy. Should show, what was it, tab crashed? About tab content, what was it, tab crash handler will show crash tab for the browser. If the browser enter crashed state, what's entered crash state again? does will show? How's this working? Will show crash tab. Okay, so let's try something. I'm gonna get rid of this condition. And this stuff. Just gonna get rid of all of that. Don't worry about all the bad linting. And then good. That's what we wanted. And goes there. That's not good. That's less good. Somehow a crash tab is linked. Revive crash tab. Let's get rid of that. Let's run this test again. That's better. That's how we want it to behave. So we have the test behavior that we want. That's good. Where the first one will show about tab crashed. Okay. Now why is the test still timing out? Waiting for about tab crashed. Ready. Got it. Switching to second tab. I don't think that's what it'll be, but we'll see. Huh. Waiting for about tab crashed ready. And it just doesn't fire. Wait for content event about tab crash ready. Let's see what fires it. Crash.js right here. Dump firing about tab crashed ready. Oh, interesting. Waiting for it happens after we fire it. Oh, wait, no, hold on a second. Huh. Accessing the linked browser is going to be a problem because it's unloaded at this point. So maybe that's the problem. We end up doing a instead. I think it bubbles. Capture, no. And about tab crashed, ready. Bubbles, yes. So, see if that works. Okay, now the test passes, which is what we wanted. We can probably, we'd have to modify some of the rest of these as well, probably, which is a pain. But what I'm worried about now, so let's, what have we changed so far? I have to keep these notes ready for Arjun. Is that don't revive crashed tab after discarding the browser. And then reviving occurs not when selecting the tab, but when clicking on the restore tab button in the about tab crashed page. So it's how we get out of the about tab crash state. Okay. And then, so notes to self, here's what I'm worried about. Do we start a load of the previous page when we select the tab and then load about tab crashed? If so, that's a waste. It's happening too fast for me to see it. But let's see here. I have to see how all this works again. So on tab browser inserted, whenever we insert the browser, insert the browser into the page, we say tab browser inserted. On tab browser inserted, if the browser has been lazy, then we restore it. Like here is maybe where we would check to see whether or not the tab permanent key is in our crashed browser list, except that it would have been removed. Shoot. Crash browsers dot. Browser inserted. That's when we do it. So like here where we're doing on tab select is too late. So this stuff, this is all too late. This this check here. wonder if instead we should do it on tab browser inserted. If we will show, here, I'll get rid of this comment for now. If tab crash browser will show, yeah, and we'll enter the crash state. Otherwise we restore the tab. I think that might be better. Let's see what happens now. Yeah, that makes me feel better, because we won't accidentally be doing this restore tab and then aborting it. We're gonna enter the crash state. So I can get rid of that, and then what else do we need to do? Let's not skip this one. Let's see what happens if we run this one instead. Oh, that one just passes right out the gate. That's nice. Test it. Not only background has the user configured send backlog package stores automatically, and the tab crash rate is not shown. Okay, great. That one works properly. Now how about this one? That one actually works okay. So let's get rid of all the skips. Let's try and run them all. Hey, that works. All right. Now, what about the other test? There was another test. Excuse me. Excuse me. The other test was revive crashed background tabs. Maybe that one will just work now. Nope. And that's probably because the test needs to be rejigged. Crash the tab, select a tab. I think I've had a chance to restore all tabs immediately. Like that, I don't think. Window ready. What? Restore immediately on session start. The background tabs after Conbrowse crash restore on demand. Tab browser loaded. Second tab browser loaded. Like flush state. Crash the browser. Let's not wait for Windows State Ready because we're not going to be restoring the tabs. Wait. Right? Yeah, we're not going to. Restored. Gotta restore the background tab. Let's see what happens now. Okay, so I think that works. I think we've got it. I just have to summarize this work. I really sort of hacked together some stuff, and let's get some. Yeah, fix that. Okay, so need to update browser. What was it? Revive crashed background tabs.js so that it's not waiting for, what was it called? SS Windows State Ready. Since we're not restoring the tabs anymore after a crash. It's only when they're accessed that we'd attempt to restore them, which is really nice. Like, before we were doing this thing where, like, yeah, we'd restore them, like, in the background, we'd send down all of the history state just so that if something, like an add-on or something, attempted to get a tab's history state, it could access it. But now we're doing it lazily, so we'll only create the browser. And we'll only direct it to that page once the something attempts to access it, which is really, really nice. It's very clever. Good on you, Kevin Jones. Okay, so what else did I do that I think it would be useful? So don't revive the crash tab after we discard it. Move the will show crashed tab stuff into on tab browser inserted where we would normally restore the tab. And this is what I had written. And then get rid of check for linked panel inside revive crash tab. This makes no sense if we're restoring from about tab crashed, or reviving, I should say. Make the test background crash symbol test wait for about tab crashed ready on the window and not on the browser. The browser is lazy, So as soon as we attempt to access it, to attach the event handler to, about tab crashed will load and fire the event, which is too soon. Yeah, get rid of. Alright, I already wrote that up there. Okay, so let's write this up for Arjun, and then I think we've got ourselves an episode. I think after I write that, we'll be ready to close out the year. All right. Oh, hey Arjun. So I spent some time looking at this today, and there's a little bit more work to do which I hadn't realized when I was first specking out this bug. Namely, I wasn't wait, how do I say this? It turns out my understanding of how discarding browsers works was slightly flawed. I didn't realize that discarding a browser also puts it into the state where the history or the tab will be restored as soon as the browser element is accessed. And inserted. I think that's what will happen. Restore state lazy day. Yeah, I'm going to restore the tab. And then inserted into the browser window DOM. I think that confused me a bit. Our plan can still work here, but it's going to require the following changes. 1. After we discard browser inside the browser crashed handler, do not call session store.revive crash tab. There's no point in doing that. Discarding the browser, discard browser is doing all of the heavy lifting for us by putting the browser tab into this super special state where it's ready to reload as soon as it's selected. Okay, so that's one thing. We had code that detected when you selected a crashed background tab and chose whether or not to send you to the About Tab Crashed page. That's here. And I'll point into it. Tab crashed. Content crash handler. Tab crash handler. Where is it? Will show crash tab. This code with the new discarding mechanism, this code will run too late when we select a background tab that had crashed, and we'll end up starting to restore the tab and then sending it to About Tab Crashed, which is a bit of a waste. What would probably be better is if we determine whether or not to send the tab to About Tab Crashed during that restoration point. We should modify session store on tab browser inserted in the following way. Inside this block, before choosing to restore the tab, we should see whether or not we should be showing about tab crashed instead. So perhaps write in something like will show crash tab. This will show crash tab if, wait, selected tab select browser selected tab. So on tab browser inserted, let G browser, hang on. I don't want to write the code for him is the thing. Like I want him to have an opportunity to write it. So I'm going to say something like restore the tab as usual you were before. If let G browser equal a window, let selected tab equals a window, G browser selected tab, or selected browser. If browser equals selected browser and tab, that I think what the above will do is check to see if when inserting one of those lazy browsers, it's the currently selected tab. If so, it'll ask whether the tab crash handler stuff, whether or not it should show about tab crashed, and if so, it'll send it there. Okay, so that was 2. 3, get rid of the linked panel check inside of revive crash tab. I thought that'd be a good idea at the time, but it turns out there are some cases where we'll enter revive crash tab when we do have a linked panel. For example, when we click on restore tab inside a crashed tab, this will revive the tab and restore the state, and the linked panel will exist throughout. Okay. I think that's the same thing as this. But I also got rid of something else, didn't I? Inside revive. Oh. This also means we can get rid of this code here for the previous thing. And we should just restore tab content. Get rid of the crashed browser check inside of revive crash tab. I think we can get rid of that. Oh wait. No, we can probably put this back now that I think about it, because we shouldn't be calling revive crash tab now unless there is a tab browser. Let's see what happens now if I run this. Makes sense, and then background tab crash. Okay. So we don't have to get rid of that check. That's good. Need to get rid of that. And then I think it's just test modification after that. Okay. We have to modify the two failing tests to not wait for tab restoration to account for the fact that background tabs aren't going to restore, flip remoteness, nor restore their state automatically when they crash. This means removing this check here, this await here. These two awaits. Removing these two awaits here. And getting rid of the definitions here. And their definitions here. We should also probably add a check that the linked panel doesn't exist as the first check in the loop. As the first check in this loop. Something like assert.ok not tab.linked panel. The tab should be discarded. The tab should be initially discarded. And then perhaps after, I'll bet if we has attribute lazy browsers today. Has attribute lazy discard browser or create lazy browser. Has attribute. No. So has attribute will probably just create the browser. Yeah, default, insert the browser. So we could probably add a check here that assert.ok tab.linked panel tab should no longer be discarded. I think that's how it'll work. So if I run background tab crash now, I think this will pass. I think. Nope. It's still discarded. That's very interesting. So it's still passing through, well, which is fine. It's just it's more clever than I thought it was. Right at the top of those asserts is fine. And then what else? Don't need to update so that, yeah. Then need to update browser revive crashed background tabs. We have to modify it to failing tests for browser revive crashed background tabs. We need to not add the SS Windows State Ready event handler on the, how's it work? We don't need to wait for the SS Windows State Ready event anymore because the background tabs shouldn't restore automatically. What else? Oh, and the, hang on. Link panel doesn't exist. And the we should also ensure that the tab browser is still remote instead of no longer being remote, since we're not doing the remoteness flipping anymore. So just invert this check. So flip the sign on this check. Let's just flip the sign on this check. So you can get rid of this and where it awaits for window ready. I think you can get rid of that. And then right, and oh, one more thing in that other test. We also have to make sure that we listen for about tab crashed ready event, which fires when about tab crashed is loaded at the right time. Tab crashed ready. This is doing it too soon now, because about tab crashed will load as soon as we attempt to access the linked browser at the point where we're trying to add the event handler. Luckily, about tab crashed ready is an event that bubbles. So instead of waiting for the event on the browser, wait for it on the window like this. That. I'm going to try and organize this a little bit more. I'm going to break this down by test for browser background. We have to start by removing these two awaits here, because we're no longer flipping remoteness nor restoring their content on restoring their tabs on crash anymore. Alright, and then I think if you can address the above, the test will pass. I know this was a lot. I may have accidentally forgotten to explain something or omitted some detail that will cause you confusion, or omit some detail and this will cause you. Please let me know if there's anything unclear here, and I'll attempt to explain. I'll attempt to explain and clear things up. Thanks, Arjun. And sorry, there are some extra hoops here. Okay. Done. That's a big comment. Look at that. Look at what we just wrote. All right. So I think we can check off these things. I mentioned them all. All right. I think that's it. I think I'm gonna stop there. It's 2:36. We didn't actually write any production code. It was mostly just like helping someone figure out their code, but sometimes that's what I do. If I'm lucky, I come up with answers, and this time I was lucky. So thumbs up. Hey, everybody, thank you for watching The Joy of Coding, episode 124. And this is the last episode for 2017. I hope, coding-wise and Joy of Coding-wise, it was an okay year. Let me know what you thought. There is a form. If you check the agenda, there is a rate this episode form. I'm going to drop that link into the Twitch chat one more time. Rate this episode. And let me know what you thought. And, give me feedback. I read everything that comes in. Let me know what I can do to make this stream better for you. And I want to wish you all the best for the rest of the year. If you're going to be taking a holiday, I hope you get a relaxing holiday. If you're not taking a holiday, well, I hope you get to get some work done while a bunch of other people take a holiday. And yeah, I'll see you in the new year, 2018. Just January 10th will be the first episode. There might even be a new Air Mozilla launching. I'm not entirely certain. Things are still up in the air, but I don't know what's happening. But at the very least, I'll be streaming to Facebook and Twitch and YouTube still. And I will see you in the new year. Take care, everybody. Have a great new year, and stay safe and keep hacking and be happy. All right, that's it. See you in 2018. Bye.
The joy of coding.
See ya.